Hello everyone, and welcome back to another book review. First of all, if you are new here, I post new book reviews almost every single day. So if you are looking to follow book reviews, if you want to get some reading inspiration or recommendations, or you just like seeing what other people are reading, then feel free to stick around. Today, I'm going to be reviewing And Live Alone by Dorothy Pitkin. So this book and how I found it comes through a very interesting story that kind of reflects the unique way that I pick books. The way that I get new books to read primarily is just by wandering around to my public library or by looking through my library catalog. Rarely do I go in with a strict list and only get what is on that list and then leave. I like to leave a little bit of wiggle room for what I call these hidden gems. And I was searching for books on New Hampshire, Maine, that region of the United States, which is in the upper northeast for those not familiar with United States geography. And this book came up as tagged for being relevant because the subtitle is The Story of a Year in New Hampshire. It was marked as a biography and it was in storage. So my understanding is that when a book doesn't get enough traction, when it's not getting checked out enough, the library moves it to the storage section, which isn't on the main shelves. Still completely able to check it out. You just have to get someone to go fetch it for you because it's not getting checked out enough for them to warrant leaving on the shelf. They feel like it will clutter it. I volunteered in a public library for 5 years, and that was something that we did to make sure our collection was clean and also take books like Christmas books off the shelves for the part of the year when they weren't really relevant. So I got this, and when I first got it, I was like, oh, this is an old book. It has that old book smell, which I absolutely love, and it's been in storage for a while, and the last time this was checked out was 2006, but this entered the library back in the 1980s. The first time it was checked out was 1981, and it was actually written in 1957. So this is quite an old gem. I feel like I love finding these sort of books because I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed it. And this is the kind of book that you don't find if you just stick to reading what everyone else is reading, or you just stick to reading what's on the bestseller list. There's absolutely nothing wrong with reading what other people are reading. There's a lot of great stuff. Everyone's reading it for a reason. That's something that I've found. And the bestsellers are usually a bestseller for a reason. They're the bestseller because a lot of people want to read it and want to enjoy it. So keeping current and reading current things is not problematic in any sense of the word. You get a lot of great books out of that, but if you confine yourself to just reading those books, then you don't open yourself up from finding a biography of a woman from the 1950s on her experience living alone in the woods of New Hampshire. And I feel like when you limit yourself artificially to only reading things that were published in the last 3 to 5 years and only books that everyone else is reading and saying are good to read, you do limit the pool of books that you're open to, and therefore you're limiting your experiences on coming across a gem like this. I was a little nervous to start this, but once I got into it, I really enjoyed it and I sped through it. This is marked as a biography, but it's really more of a memoir. We're following Dorothy Pitkin as she navigates this time in her life post husband's I almost said demise, death. She is struggling with something that a lot of women will encounter at some point in their life. A large portion of women at some point in their life do become widows. Their husbands die, usually because both women live longer than men, and also women tend to be a year or two younger than their husband. I think this was maybe even more common, or there was more of an age gap in, say, when she got married, which I assume was 1920s, 1930s. There was more of an age gap, I'm going to guess, and of course women do still live longer than men, so most women go through this phase in her life. This woman kind of decided that she wasn't going to resign herself to the normal things that keep widowed women occupied until they're old, especially because she became widowed in kind of her middle age and not older in life. So she feels like she has a lot of time left, and she kind of decides after 1 year in social work, which really isn't a great fit for her because she kind of is getting a little too emotionally involved with the clients, that she needs to make a change, and she's going to break out of the mold that society has set for women, especially back in the 1950s. Society had a lot stricter of a mold for what a woman should be doing, probably a lot more rules than what a woman should be doing post husband's death. And she decides she is going to buy a house in New Hampshire, and she is going to write something that she wants to do but hasn't done before. This is what the cover looks like, and we have the house in question, and it really is just a story of her first year in New Hampshire, with this house and all her thoughts and feelings that come with it. I found that I really resonated with her humor style when she would say things. It wasn't overall a humorous book, I would say, but it did have humorous moments that I was laughing at, and I really felt this connection with a woman who lived over 50, 60, 70 years ago at this point. So I felt like having that connection made it really interesting, and it's a book that I feel like, true, this is why the library put it in general storage, probably doesn't come off the shelf. It's quite a bit older, and I feel like people might pass it up as not being relatable or relevant anymore, but it really is, especially because that human experience of navigating loneliness, of how you pick up the pieces of your life when your children are gone and your husband has died. These are two things that I have not experienced in my life, but a lot of women will experience in their life, and it is kind of a universal human thing that we all go through. And I think therefore something from 1950s can really still be relevant today to a lot of people. And of course you don't have to be a woman to read this book and enjoy it, but just reading about a woman who's striking out and making her place in the world. It's really a reflective memoir of a woman in her own way, bucking society's trends and trying to strike out on her own, while also trying to do things that she would like to do, such as write and make her way in this New Hampshire house. There was one passage that I did think kind of struck a chord with me just due to the age of the book. So this is on page 140. She says, she's talking about the role that women are supposed to play in society, and she says, perhaps after a while we might be able to free ourselves from the crippling stereotypes of what a man is and what a woman is, and realize that there are potentials in being a man or a woman that we haven't dreamed of, for no one has yet ever been wholly man or woman. So I like that section in the middle where she's talking about freeing themselves from the stereotype of being a woman, because I feel like, first of all, she kind of reflects on how much more freedom she has over the last 50 years of her life. So like, she's seen a lot of change and improvement in the role of women in the position women can hold in society in her life. And I think of 70 years later, how much more open society has been for women, how many more opportunities I have that she wouldn't have. She talks at one point about being in school the first time. She went back after her husband passed away to get her degree in social work, or to study for social work. The first time she talked about this intense pressure to get married, and you have to find a mate before you end college, which was a pressure on women back then. I went to college and it would probably be seen as weird. In fact, I don't really know anyone who got married during college. I know a very small handful of people who got married right after college, but now in my mid to late 20s, this is when a lot of people are getting married. So marriage has been pushed off a little bit, so you don't have that dual pressure of completing a degree and getting married at the same time in life, which is just something that has changed, especially when I read that in here. And she talks about when she went back to school after her husband had passed away, she's had her kids, she's raised her family, she's lost her husband, and she was able to enjoy school so much more. And I think about all these other little things that have changed so much in life from when she was living in her house in New Hampshire in the 1950s to the time that I'm living in today. Overall, I just felt such a connection with the author of this memoir. I think if you're looking for an interesting memoir that kind of explores what to do in that lonely period following a big transition in your life, if you just like hearing about someone striking out and trying to make their own little corner of the world the best they can, and to follow their dreams the best they can, even if they are not glamorous, but they're just simple, like wanting to write quietly in a house in the New Hampshire woods. This is an enjoyable, entertaining, reflective memoir that I am so glad that I found, and I'm glad that I was able to pick up. I think this really is one of those moments where I am once again convinced of the, I don't want to say correctness, but of the effectiveness of my method of picking books, because I'm not limiting myself. I'm open to a book that is written quite a number of years ago, and I found something that I really enjoyed, and I would definitely recommend to other people. So if you're looking for, as I mentioned, a reflective memoir on what to do after a big transition in life, or you also just like reading about the natural world, and Live Alone by Dorothy Pitkin might be the book for you, might be something you want to check out or see if you can find a copy of. If you've read this book, if you've read any books similar to this, I would love to hear it in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.